Hi, this is RN Bhaskar. It's the end of a third week, our 15th episode. And yes, we'll be back again on Monday because tomorrow's the weekend. And before we begin, a happy weekend next week for the weekend. Okay. Today, we are going to talk about stories related more to taxation and to disputes over taxation, and sometimes even disputes with the Indian government on law. And as always, I have my co-anchors. I've got Katya and I have Isha. And together we'll try to deal with three different kinds of headlines. Okay. The headlines are basically one, it talks about how exactly are in tax authorities are now trying to prosecute private equity promoters for taxes that they have not paid. The other story that we're going to talk about is economy related, where the government becomes richer even when the people don't earn enough money. And we're also going to talk about exports on the policy front. And the third story is one where we're talking about how Trump's Twitter, or X as it's known today, has sued the government for using certain provisions of the Information Technology Act. Together, all the stories talk about disconsonance between people and the government. Let's see, we'll talk about it more. Let's see the first story first. And the first story is with Katya, where she's going to talk about the income tax notices.
It's that time of the year, sir, when the IT department gets extra active. But last 2 years, they have a lot more to be a lot more vigilant about. We all know that private equity companies, as well as promoters of companies, made a killing in the bull markets. But a lot of, according to tax officials, a lot of them, at least 300 of them, that they've sent notices who have not paid capital gains tax or paid less. And then according to IT department estimates, this chunk is as high as 4,200 crores, and these are for the profits that have been booked between 2021 to 2024 as expected because of the IPOs as well as secondary sales. So also, which are the kind of companies that are mostly been sent notices to? The sectors are anybody's guess. They are mostly startups, fintechs, EVs, solar equipment manufacturers, and then there is always the IT department favorite, which is the real estate companies. And how are they done? How are they? What are the ways they've used to evade taxes? Are also very interesting. They've used offer for sale as a very good method. Cash, gold, property, and even crypto to evade tax. In fact, a lot of them were not caught until one of the promoter has purchased two luxury cars in his minor child's name. And these are the kind of ways they have come out, apart from the fact that data analytics was heavily used to track down these offenders. And so what do you think, sir? This kind of notices are going to continue, and are in ways to evade tax getting more and more interesting?
In fact, the lust for money has been so great among private equity holders and speculators, and the market's moving and everyone was making money, the desire to save on taxes also became equally strong. And what the income tax has done in the last few years is that it has learned how to data mine, pick up information, and then use algorithms to find certain kinds of information it wants. And in the private equity market, there are two kinds of ways you make money. One is you invest, and the second is, and when the company is mature, you sell the stocks. But the second is where you invest in, let's say, an IPO, and before it starts tapering off, you sell it off immediately. The IPO market is also a scandalous market when it comes to making money. So they made money and they thought they were smart and they thought they could adjust certain losses personally. And the income tax department found that they were not right. And it sent notices, but then private equity firms also have the lawyers. Let's see whether the notices stand. In the past, not all notices have stood the test of law. And many of them had to be withdrawn or forgotten. And so let's see what happens. But it's a very interesting development. And as you pointed rightly, Katya, this is the time of year when the tax authorities are hyperactive. And you can see that here. Okay. So let me go to my story, which is not on a company, which is not on the government directly, but indirectly. As Mint points out, government taxes rose, tax collections rose by almost about 13%, a little over 13%. And this was at a time when nominal GDP grew only by 9%. So you have nominal GDP growing by 9%, tax collection growing by 13%, and it effectively means that the government got richer even when people did not get richer. And remember, this 9% GDP is only about from the top 5% of the population. Remove the top 5%, and GDP growth might be just about 2 or 3%. Your guess is as good as mine. Because much of the money is made by the rich. So you have a government that gets richer, and people who don't get rich, many of them even become poorer. This is not a happy state of affairs. And you can see the discontent on the streets, in the talks that you have with various people. And there is also another corollary to the government policies, and that is exports. Just watch the way exports are falling. Exports fall when India becomes less competitive. One reason it's become uncompetitive is because it likes to protect certain industry with high tariffs, something that Trump is against. But there's a second reason. The industrial climate is not sound. Hence, domestic investments are not taking place. Hence, industrial pickup is very poor, and that results in poor exports. And what is frightening, and mark my words, what is frightening is the Indian government's inability to withstand US pressures. It's agreed to increase its imports from the US, increase its trade with the US to 500 billion, which means we'll import more from the US. We won't be able to export more. We even agreed to import arms into the F-35s, which have failed in the two big theaters of war, which are Ukraine and the Middle East. India is likely to lose out because India has not yet gone towards the east. Yes, India has an FTA with the ASEAN region, but the stories we get is that the Indian representatives are belligerent there. But when they go to Europe, or when they go to New Zealand, look at them almost genuflecting. The government talks about removing the colonial mindset, but if you look at the body language and they meet the Europeans or the New Zealanders, and when they meet the Asians, you can see the difference. India needs to change its trade policies immediately. It'll be the loser in the next 2 years. And that takes me to the third story. And the third story is by Isha, where she talks about Musk's Twitter or X. Isha, over to you.
Hello, good morning. Today I'm going to be bringing you a story from the Indian Express titled X sues government for using IT Act to block content. X, formerly known as Twitter, which is owned by Elon Musk, has filed a lawsuit against the central government challenging the use of Section 79(3)(b) of the Information Technology Act 2000 to issue blocking orders, claiming that it facilitates the creation of an unlawful and parallel content censorship regime. So this is the second time X has challenged the Indian censorship regime, and in its recent petition filed at the Karnataka High Court, X claims that multiple government agencies and departments are issuing content takedown notices to social media platforms under Section 79(3)(b) of the IT Act, bypassing the safeguards of the Section 69A of the IT Act. X cites the landmark Shreya Singhal judgment, which states that content can only be censored under court order or under Section 69A of the IT Act and not under Section 79(3)(b), which it's currently using. So, under Section 69A, the blocking process dictated by that section, the government must comply with the safeguards and provisions to block information affecting the sovereignty, integrity, defense, or security. But it can block any information that it deems unlawful under any law under the section 79(3)(b) without any safeguards whatsoever. X that contends that the IT ministry has directed central and state government officials as well as police to authorize information blocking orders under section 79(3)(b). That is what X is declaring unlawful, and it's urging the courts to only allow information blocking under 69A and not 79(3)(b because there are more safeguards. Additionally, X is also seeking protection against coercive action for not joining SAYOG, a Ministry of Home Affairs portal where central and state government agencies and local police officers can issue blocking orders under Section 79(3)(b outside of the Section 69A process, which in turn creates a parallel mechanism for censorship which doesn't offer any safeguards and hence opens us up to more abuse and infringement of free speech. That's all from my side, sir. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the story.
Thank you, Isha, for the marvelous piece of information about Musk. In fact, the big majors on social media are all American, whether it's YouTube, or it's Facebook, or it's Twitter, X. And they were very careful about how they treaded in Indian territory. But after Musk came in, obviously, he's twisted the arms of the government very, very severely. Every American company has learned that it can challenge laws, and some of these laws needed to be challenged. Do remember that the government wanted to bring in a new IT bill, which even allowed it to close the platform altogether. When Musk came in, when Trump came in, that provision, that bill itself was deferred for further consultations. Yes, these tensions are going to grow, and these tensions need to be there because the government does not like freedom of information. And it has tried to do everything in its power to muzzle media. Thanks, Isha. This was a valuable piece of information, and we would now like to go to some questions that have started coming in. The first one is a question which I don't know whether. Okay, the question is, why is the government increasing its taxes? Two reasons why. One is, of course, social spending, but the second is freebies. If you look at some of the writings I've done, UP has just become the largest taxpayer in the country. Uttar Pradesh. How? Because of grants given by the government, and the grants result in GST, and because of GST, UP has become the largest. When the government wants to win favors with the voters by giving freebies and grants to select states, you are going to have a government that needs more and more money through taxes to feed its ever-growing appetite for freebies and grants. So, well, that's the reason why the government needs more money. It does not spend on education and health as much as it spends on freebies. The next question is, do you justify the income tax demand of tax from private equity companies? Yes. The income tax rules are relatively clear, and income tax is authorized to find out if people have not paid the taxes. The tax rates are not very high when compared to the tax rates of most of the countries. And private equity owners may have cut corners, but it's also true that the income tax department can browbeat people, can be high-handed because it has to meet its targets. Only a judicial process will show which is true. So possibly the income tax department is right unless proved otherwise. And the third question is, why is Musk upset? Actually, Musk is upset because, like all media companies, he doesn't want Twitter's content to be removed or someone ordering Twitter to remove the content. And he's right in saying that media must be allowed a certain latitude. The only irony is that Twitter is demanding that latitude in India when the US has been breaking all norms and trying to muzzle the press and try to muzzle protests. But that's another story. Anyway, that brings me to the end of today's news behind the news. Again, the announcement that I did not make in the beginning. This is BKBB R and Bhaskar. BKBB is an acronym for Bhaskar Ki Business Baatein. That's a channel that brings you policies, conversations, and stories. And today, since it's the last day of the week, please have a wonderful weekend. But before doing that, please subscribe to the channel. Please click the like button. We are delighted when we see more likes, and we'd like you to be with us all the time. See you on Monday. Monday is when we begin the fourth week of our news behind the news, which is what this channel tries to do. See you on Monday. Have a great time.